Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we are continuing our season-long fantasy football positional episodes for the upcoming 2023 fantasy football season. And today we are doing our buy list for the running back position. So, I had a lot of people ask me last year, like, what does it mean to be on the buy list? Like, why do you call it the buy list? So basically, I call it the buy list because, we're Mike's Money Picks. We got to make things money oriented, right? So what does it mean to be on the buy list at any position for that matter? So what the buy list means is that I have these players ranked higher than consensus at their position. I am willing to draft these players ahead of their current ADP, and I believe that they all have paths to easily outpace their ADP. In other words, these are the guys that I want to leave drafts with these guys on my roster for the 2023 season. These are my guys at the running back position for the 2023 season, and I'm going to ride or die with their success for how they do this season. Now, if you want to see my full ranks and my full draft guide, head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/Mike's Money Picks. Link is in the description in the YouTube video. If you also want to see my opinions on pretty much every player in the NFL, check out my team previews. I've done one for 23 of the 32 NFL teams at this point. I'm finishing up the NFC North and AFC South this week. So if you check those out, you'll get my opinions on other players at other positions and for almost every team. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the running backs that are on the buy list for 2023. All right, so the first running back on my buy list for 2023 is Bijan Robinson of the Atlanta Falcons. His current ADP is 10.4, and his rank in ADP is running back 3. It's worth noting that I'm using the ESPN redraft PPR ADP that they have on their website publicly right now. I know ESPN is one of the most popular league platforms, along with Sleeper, along with Yahoo. So I'm just going to go ahead and go with the ESPN ADP. Obviously, if you see one somewhere different, like roll with that. But I think Bijan's going to be, I have him ranked higher than pretty much anywhere his ADP is going to be right now. Bijan is my running back 3, but I also have him as my number 5 overall player. That's right. I'm comfortable drafting him in the early to middle first round, and I think you can do so with a lot of confidence and a lot of safety in that pick. Quite frankly, I think Bijan Robinson is the best running back prospect to come into the NFL since Saquon Barkley, and that was 5 years ago. I think Bijan is an elite player. I think he excels in all facets of the game. If you listen to any of my college football podcasts last season, you know how I feel about Bijan as a player and as a fantasy option. Like, I just think that his ability gives him a massively high ceiling for, his fantasy prospects in the NFL. Now, if you were doubting on how good of a player Bijan actually was in college, well, according to Pro Football Focus, Bijan forced 102 missed tackles last season, which is the most in the Pro Football Focus era in college football. What's even more impressive is that Bijan did not play in a conference championship game, and he did not play in a bowl game last season. So he set that record playing only 12 games, where a lot of guys are having the opportunity to play 13 or 14 or maybe even 15 if they played in the college football playoff, and he still holds that record. That is how elite he was, and that was just a sign of, just how good he was at Texas in terms of making people miss. Now, another thing to add is that historically, first-round running backs are a pretty good bet in fantasy football, meaning running backs that were taken in the first round in the NFL draft, how they turned out their rookie year, it is pretty solid. There have been 8 rookie running backs that were drafted in the first round since 2015, and 6 of those 8 rookie running backs have finished in the top 10 in their position at fantasy in their rookie season, including a running back 1 finish from Saquon Barkley as a rookie, a running back 2 finish from Ezekiel Elliott as a rookie, and a running back 3 finish from Najee Harris as a rookie. First round rookie running backs tend to turn into good fantasy football players. Do not get left behind on the Bijan Robinson train. And I think you could even add some of that effect to Jahmyr Gibbs as well, because Jahmyr Gibbs was also drafted in the first round. Now, what's also worth noting with Bijan is not only do I think that is he elite as a player, but he ended up in just a dream landing spot with the Atlanta Falcons. No team in the NFL ran the ball more than the Atlanta Falcons last season. They led the league in total rushing plays, and they actually led the league in rush rate over expectation, meaning when they were in positions that dictated that they should be throwing the ball, they were still running. It's what Arthur Smith does. He believes in running the football, and this year he's going to have Bijan running it a lot. Oh, and did I mention Bijan also excels at two areas that are the cheat codes for being a good fantasy running back, being effective in the red zone and being effective as a pass catcher. He was great at both at the University of Texas. If you're active on NFL Twitter, you've seen the videos of him cooking linebackers and DBs in one-on-ones as a pass catcher for the Atlanta Falcons. So I think you've got a guy who his workload is going to be massive, his talent level is massive, and he is great at the levels that make great fantasy options at his position. I just can't speak enough on how highly I think of Bijan Robinson. And I think it says even more about Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler that I even have Bijan Robinson as my running back 3. But he is the first running back on the buy list for the 2023 season. Draft Bijan in the first round and let him cook. Now, my second running back on the buy list for the 2023 season is Tony Pollard of the Dallas Cowboys. His current ADP is 22, and his rank in that ADP is running back 9. My rank for Tony Pollard is running back 5, and I have him as my number 13 overall player. Pollard finished last season as running back 8 overall and running back 8 in fantasy points per game. So why are we drafting him at running back 9 if he was running back 8 last season? And when you look at the stats from last season, he only needed a 51% snap share and a 48% opportunity share to finish as running back 8. Ezekiel Elliott is currently not a Dallas Cowboy. And in 2022, Ezekiel Elliott accounted for a 55% snap share and a 52% opportunity share. And Elliott had 40 more carries than Tony Pollard. That's right. Elliott out-carried Tony Pollard by 40, yet Pollard still finished as RB8 on the season. Now, it's also worth noting that Ezekiel Elliott missed 2 games last season, so it allowed us to get a glimpse into what the Cowboys' offense would look like with no Ezekiel Elliott in it. In those 2 games that Elliott missed, Pollard went for a 55% snap share, 14 carries, and 33.7 fantasy points against the Bears, which was good for running back 4. And then the other game was an 85% snap share with 22 carries, only 21.8 fantasy points, which was good for running back 8 on the week. That is an average of 27 fantasy points between those 2 performances. Tony Pollard, absolutely elite level option. I cannot speak enough about him. He is my second running back on the buy list for 2023. The third running back on the buy list is James Conner of the Arizona Cardinals. His current ADP is 67, which ranks as the 20th running back taken off the board. My rank for James Conner is running back 17. Last year, James Conner finished as running back 19 overall and running back 9 in fantasy points per game last season. That gap accounts for he did miss a few games, but not too many. And he ended up seeing a pretty healthy workload. He ranked 8th in opportunity share and had 58 total targets on the season. Now, there's a stat that's very important for running backs. It's called weighted opportunities. It basically counts up a running back's total touches, but does a multiplier for targets because targets tend to lead to more fantasy points, especially in PPR fantasy football. And so in weighted opportunities, James Conner ended up ranking 16th in the entire league at the running back position in only 13 games played. He missed 4 games and still ranked 16th in weighted opportunities. Translation, this guy, when he was active, was getting the football a ton. And a lot of people are concerned about the current state of the Cardinals offense. Well, I think there's a few things we can look at with James Conner. First, Chase Edmonds was traded away in the midseason. Conner ranked as running back 4 in games after Chase Edmonds was traded away. It's also worth noting that in the last 4 games of last season, Kyler Murray did not play for the Arizona Cardinals or left early. So in those last 4 games that James Conner played with no Kyler Murray, James Conner averaged 20 fantasy points per game in those 4 games and never had a weekly finish worse than 15th. And the Cardinals offense never scored more than 20 points in any of those 4 games. So what you're looking at with James Conner is a guy that when he's healthy, the Cardinals are going to use him, and they're going to use him a ton. And it does not matter how much points the Cardinals offense is going to score. James Conner is still going to eat. He's had back-to-back top 10 finishes in fantasy points per game in this Cardinals backfield. And I don't see a reason why he is being drafted outside the top 20 running backs right now. James Conner is the 3rd running back on my buy list for 2023. Now, the 4th running back on my buy list is Antonio Gibson of the Washington Commanders. Side note, I kind of missed the football team. I think that was a really good nickname, and I don't know. I kind of miss it. I missed calling him the Washington football team. Anyway, Antonio Gibson, his current ADP is 126.5, which ranks as the 36th running back being taken off the board. I currently have him as my running back 33, and that could be subject to change depending on landing spots for a few guys like Dalvin Cook or Ezekiel Elliott. Now, Antonio Gibson finished last season as running back 28 on only a 46.6% snap share and a 43.3% opportunity share. He was a part-time player in this backfield last season, and he still finished as a top 30 running back, yet currently we are drafting him outside the top 35. I don't know what's going on here. Now, let me make the case for him to finish even further inside the top 30. Last year, Antonio Gibson finished with 58 targets on a 12% target share. J.D. McKissic was the featured receiving back when he was active in Washington last season. J.D. McKissic saw 40 targets last year. So if you were to kind of shift those targets over to Antonio Gibson and give Antonio Gibson 98 targets, what is that going to do for his fantasy production? The only place it's going to go is up from that running back 28 finish. Now, if your counter argument is, well, Brian Robinson Jr. is still in Washington. What if Brian Robinson Jr. ends up dominating this backfield? I see Brian Robinson Jr. as more of an early down plotter. I do not think he's going to take passing work away from Antonio Gibson. Keep in mind, Antonio Gibson was a part-time wide receiver when he was in college at Memphis. So if they're going to be throwing to a running back, it's going to be Antonio Gibson. And the new offensive coordinator is Eric Bieniemy, formerly of the Kansas City Chiefs, a guy that with that offense loved to throw to running backs, loved to throw to tight ends. And so I just think that's even going to help Gibson even more. Now, if you're worried about Gibson being a part-time player, if you're worried about Brian Robinson, don't be, because last year, Gibson had two really good games as a part-time player. He finished as running back 16 in week 7 and running back 11 in week 8 and did not see above a 40% snap share in either game of those two. So you're looking at a guy that even if he does end up being a part-time player, can still contribute for you. And I think the fact that he's being drafted outside the top 35 running backs right now is just crazy. Draft Antonio Gibson with confidence in 2023. He's the 4th running back on my buy list. The 5th running back on my buy list is Roshan Johnson of the Chicago Bears. His current ADP is 167.8. Now, I had to go to Sleeper to find that one. There was something wrong with ESPN, and I could not find Roshan Johnson on that list. So that is the Sleeper ADP, 167.8, and he's ranking as the 51st running back taken off the board right now. He is my running back 43 for the 2023 season. Big gap there between where Roshan Johnson's being drafted and where I have him. Now, it's important to note that he's another rookie running back coming out of the University of Texas. Roshan Johnson was actually Bijan Robinson's backup last year, or actually for the last 3 years at Texas. Now, Roshan graded out at the combine with elite level size and speed for the running back position when he entered this year's draft class, and he got drafted to a Bears team that had the highest rush rate in the NFL last season. Yes, the Falcons did have more rushing plays called, but the Falcons had more total plays called than the Bears. So the Bears actually had the highest percentage of their plays that were rushes. Now, granted, were some of those rushes to Jordan or Justin Fields? Yeah, some of them were, but does that mean that all of them were Justin Fields? No, these running backs are absolutely going to be involved. And David Montgomery is no longer a Chicago Bear. So let's make the case for Roshan Johnson. So Roshan Johnson only saw 93 carries last season at Texas, but he did average 6 yards per carry, which is only slightly below Bijan Robinson's 6.1. As a guy who watched every Texas game last season, because not only am I a Texas fan, but I'm also a big Bijan Robinson fan, there was not that big of a gap in effectiveness when Bijan Robinson came out and Roshan Johnson went in. Now, Roshan actually had a higher target rate than Bijan. They did tend to have Roshan in situations where, they were going no huddle or, they were already on long drives and they needed to get Bijan a break. So he did happen to find his way into some passing down work and had a target share over 5% and caught 14 passes in the 2022 season. I also think the fact that Roshan was a backup for 3 years behind Bijan at Texas will help his NFL career, because you're looking at a guy who doesn't have the same level of wear and tear that other starting running backs do. And he doesn't have any injury history, and he doesn't have any really blemishes on his record, because the guy just hasn't been, like worn down like other running backs. When he came in the game, he was very effective. And so I think that's going to play into his favor. Looking at how the NFL treats the running back position, it's good to have a guy who has fresh legs at that position. Now, he's going to be competing with two guys, 4 snaps and 4 carries and 4 targets in the Chicago backfield. They are Khalil Herbert and Deontay Foreman. So let's make the case against those two guys. So Khalil Herbert has never had more than 140 total touches in a season in his NFL career. He's always been just kind of a rotational backup piece to David Montgomery. He's never been a feature back. Deontay Foreman was signed in free agency from the Carolina Panthers. And what we know about Deontay Foreman's usage in the last 2 seasons is that he don't catch passes. He is not a guy who is used in the passing game. He is not a guy who is going to see a lot of targets or, a lot of use in 2-minute drills or, trailing situations, which I do think the Bears can find themselves in this season. So Roshan Johnson is a guy who in college was an elite level player, has no mileage on him because he was mostly a backup, and is competing with two guys who either haven't been a full-time player or have not shown the capability to be a full-time player. So I really think the upside is there for Roshan Johnson in this Bears offense that loves to run the football to have a really successful fantasy season. I think he could absolutely be this year's Dameon Pierce, where he breaks away from the rest of that backfield and has a major fantasy season in his rookie campaign for the Chicago Bears. Roshan Johnson is the 5th running back on my buy list for 2023. Now, the last running back on my buy list, this one's a deeper sleeper than the previous ones. I've got Jerome Ford of the Cleveland Browns. His current ADP is 170.2, which ranks as the 62nd running back being taken off the board. My rank, I have Jerome Ford as my running back 49. Yeah, big gap there. I like Jerome Ford because I really like this Cleveland backfield. And as of recording, he's the 2nd running back in this Cleveland backfield. So let's make the case for why a Cleveland RB2 can be a successful fantasy player. So Nick Chubb has not seen over a 57% snap share in a season since 2019. Why is that important? 2019 was when Kareem Hunt was suspended for half the season. So since Kareem Hunt has been active in Cleveland, Nick Chubb has not seen over 57% snap share, meaning that for that trend to continue, other Browns running backs not named Nick Chubb would need to see at least a 43% combined snap share for this season. Well, who's the next running back in line? It'd be Jerome Ford, who did not do much in his rookie year out of Cincinnati, but is in a prime position to do a lot this year. So let's talk about what that position could mean for him. So he's basically what I would expect to be taking over the Kareem Hunt role. Now, does that mean he's going to be as good of a player as Kareem Hunt? Probably not. Are they going to use him as much as they use Kareem Hunt? Maybe not. But is the pathway there for him to do so? And if Nick Chubb ever gets hurt, is he in line for a massive workload? Yes, absolutely. Yes. So Kareem Hunt, in his time with the Browns, averaged around a 50% snap share and 40 targets per season. And Kareem Hunt finished as a top 25 running back in fantasy points per game in 3 of his 4 seasons in Cleveland. So the Browns' RB2 position can be very lucrative, and it could even turn into RB1 if Nick Chubb were to find himself injured, which he has quite often in his young NFL career. So I think that there is absolutely a pathway there for Jerome Ford to have a breakout season and be one of the draft picks of the year in fantasy football. Granted, if Cleveland signs another running back in between now and the start of the season, is Jerome Ford toast? Yes, probably yes. But if he remains the RB2 in Cleveland, I don't think he has to see as much work as Kareem Hunt. I don't think he has to be as good as Kareem Hunt, but he just has to be there, and the work will come and the production will come. That is why I have Jerome Ford ranked inside my top 50 running backs, and that is why he is the 6th running back on my buy list for the 2023 season. Now, if you made it this far, this is the end of the running back buy list for the 2023 season. If you like what you saw on YouTube, please hit the like button. It really helps me out a lot. And hit the subscribe button. You'll be notified when new episodes drop, like the rest of our positional previews. The running back sell list is coming up, as well as the wide receivers and the tight ends. The quarterback video is already out. Check the link in the description. And the rest of my all 32 NFL team previews, if you want to see a specific team or specific player, are also out. I've got 23 of the 32 teams done. Links are in the description on YouTube for all that. If you're listening to the podcast on audio form, Spotify, Apple, or wherever else, please rate and review. And my full rankings and draft guide are available on my Patreon, patreon.com/MikesMoneyPicks. All right, Thank you guys for tuning in to the running back buy list. Hopefully, I was able to give you guys some information that will help you draft the right running backs this season and win your fantasy leagues. Next up is going to be the running back sell list, where I tell you the running backs to avoid in the 2023 season. So you want to draft these running backs that I talked about today. You don't want to draft the ones that I'm going to talk about later this week. If you subscribe, you'll notify when that episode's drop. Thank you guys for watching and listening, and I will see you.